week. In the FDOT budget, they have a 13.4 billion, I think it is, in the work plan. They also have some money in there for moving Florida forward, but in our meeting the other day with the secretary and others over at DOT, it doesn't do exactly what they want and what they actually need. It would basically, they need $4 billion, and then they can leverage that into an additional $3 billion and tackle some of the bigger projects around the state. What this does in both the House and the Senate is it gives them $2 billion. I think in the Senate bill, it actually says there would be another $2 billion coming, but it doesn't say when. And then in the House bill, it doesn't even mention an additional $2 billion. So we need to figure out what's happening there. We have a little bit of time when it comes to the budget because it'll be near the end of session when they finalize all that. But we'll look into that. They also currently, one of the things they had taken out of that original transportation bill we had on our list earlier, they had taken the phase design build out of that and said it would be in the budget, and that has not shown up yet. But I'm sure it will at some point in one of the amendments or something. So that's moving forward, and we're watching that closely, and we'll report back on that as we move along. Let me just move kind of to our list. You'll see there's a lot more red on there. So there's some things that are moving. The first one, obviously, is this higher education finances bill, which is the has the language in it that it would exempt the universities from CCNA. We talked about this last week. The Senate's just trying to circumvent the process. So as you can see, it's moved through its committees. I think it's going to be on the floor today, if I'm correct. And it'll pass out of the Senate, and then it will wait for a while until the conference committees start. And our action plan here has to be get the House to not agree to that. So I'm working on some text. We'll be sending out some stuff to the membership and asking members to contact their House members to let them know that the way this is being done, the House really never gets to consider it. It never goes through a committee or anything else, and that's just not the proper process. And we're ready to debate the merits of CCNA, but we can't do that if we're not allowed. So that's what's coming with that. Obviously, there's no companion bill, as you can see there. This is all coming from the Senate, just trying to squeeze it in the budget. So the next group down, Laura.
Alan, Derek has some feedback.
Yeah. Real quick, I just want to, for everyone on, it's going to be up on Tuesday on the Senate floor.
Oh, okay, on Tuesday. Okay. Sounds good. Good, a delay. We're getting there, Derek. So the licensing bills, they both moved through their first committee, but to me seem a bit sluggish. So we're going to watch those real close. That would allow basically anybody from anywhere that has a PE license from anywhere could come to Florida and sign the paper, and unless they're a convicted felon or something, they would be a PE in Florida as well. And that applies to a lot of different industries. And I believe they added on even the medical. It was started out as the DBPR professions, but I think they've added some medical stuff into one of the bills. So that's going to help weigh it down. But we'll just keep an eye on those. There's still a ways to go for that, so that everybody knows. Derek, what's the debt? When do the subcommittees stop meeting?
For the House, actually, is this week.
Good.
One or two may carry over, but the original committee of reference, the first stop today is the last day for those. So if you didn't get on the agenda this week, high likelihood that they will, unless you get withdrawn, which the House hasn't been doing a lot lately. It's going to be hard. This committee here met earlier this week, and they're not scheduled. The chair mentioned they were not scheduled to meet anymore.
Okay. All right. Good. I figured it was coming up. We're at the end of the fourth week of session, so that everybody knows. That means we've got 5 to go. But as we get into this point of session, 4th, 5th week, and then you'll see it with the committees as we move, even the full committees as we move forward. They stop meeting, and the legislature starts going to the floor much more often because now they've got a good number of bills to deal with on the floor. And when they stop meeting, in most cases, if you haven't gotten your bill through that committee, you're done. So it's a good point in the season. We'll start seeing some of these die off and as they don't make it through committee. So these two bills again with 4 committees, 2 on each side to go. That's I wouldn't count them dead, but they're on some life support there. I couldn't remember if I had reported on this last week. The statute of repose bill is done. It's been passed by both the House and Senate, and will be headed to the governor. That is Senate Bill 360. For those that don't know, what they do is you've got 2 bills, and so like the House bill, or I think the Senate bill in this case, went to the House. The House went ahead and finished their bill, made it identical to the Senate bill, laid their bill on the table. Then they amended the Senate bill and sent it back to the Senate, and the Senate passed it, and that was that. So Senate Bill 360 will be the official bill on that issue. Move it on, Laura. And then this one, Derek, jump in on this one if you guys got any further information. I know we were looking for some. Senate Bill 154 is a good bill. We like it. It does some good things to help move us forward, but for some reason it's stuck on the floor. It was supposed to be up Wednesday, and they didn't get to it, so it says it's retained on the calendar. And then it wasn't on the agenda yesterday. So I'm not sure if they're just holding it up, waiting on the House, because Laura, if you could scroll down just a little bit more, because the House isn't moving nearly as fast. They've got it through 2 committees. We've got 1 more to go. I met with the sponsor of the bill earlier this week, and let her know we don't like the provision that's in her bill allowing general contractors and local building inspectors to perform the phase 1 inspection. And she seemed to understand, but there's somebody in the background that's really in charge of this bill. Last year it was the incoming speaker, Danny Perez, but I'm hearing it might be some committee staff as well. And they're just afraid we don't have enough structural engineers, but that's not the right way to go about it. The Senate does it much better. They, if you're under contract by the end of 2024, your building's over 30 years old. That's good, and you just if you run a little bit past the deadline, that would be allowed. So I like that way. The big thing is let's just get out there and get these inspections going so we can see if we've got enough structural engineers or not, and then if we don't, we'll deal with it. But they're kind of panicking. So anyway, Derek, I know I texted y'all about it. I know Senator Bradley's busy, so I didn't know if y'all had a chance to talk to her yesterday.
We did not, but that conversation is forthcoming.
Yeah, well, she's on our side. I mean, I've got a lot of confidence in her. She's handled this bill really well. So, but we need to just help get that stuff off the House bill.
Alan,
yeah.
This is if it's helpful. On Wednesday, when the Senate President was explaining how the order would, of the day would go, she did mention this particular bill and said that they were going to hold off on taking it up so that they could continue to have conversations with their House counterparts. Okay. So if that's helpful, she did say that.
Yeah, that is helpful because I didn't see that. So yes, that's very helpful. Because I know what they're talking about. Number one, it's the GC and building inspector issue, because not only have I talked to the sponsor about that, but Senate staff, Booter and Miguel had called me on Sunday last week, and that's what we talked about. And I know when I hung up from them, they were pretty solid on we didn't need to include, anybody else in that phase 1 inspection. So I think they're just trying to talk them into that, but we're pushing them to the other thing they're talking about is more of the reserve study stuff, and those companies that do the reserve studies, they have people with them that know something about construction that will do sort of a rudimentary walkthrough of the facility. But now they're calling for they named it last year in the bill that became the law. They named it the structural integrity study. And that implies a lot more than it's really supposed to be, but the legislature now is acting on it. Like, you got to have engineers to do it. You got to, and they're adding in general contractors and stuff in the House, but you really don't need those people for that, because some buildings do those every single year. Some of them do every 3 to 5 years. The new law now calls that they have to be done every 10 years, but we're just talking about the reserve study, which is more of a financial study to help the condo association know how much they have to put in reserves. It's not an actual structural inspection of the building. So anyway, that's what they're talking about, and we'll get through it. So Laura's already moved on. Sovereign immunity, I keep these up there because of the impact these could have on CEIs and others. As you can see, it moved through one committee in the House, got postponed, and the second one has not moved in the Senate. So that one I would, if I was a betting man, say that one's in trouble. And we don't want it anyway, so that's good. And then we're already down to the monitoring bills. All right. The DEP stuff, I think we can call that one dead. I am going to be on a call this morning at 11 with the home builders and AIF and some others. I think we're setting up a meeting. Actually, the meeting is with Representative Payne. And then we're also trying to get one set up with Senator Brodeur. It's kind of, these meetings are kind of just to make sure we've got this nailed tight, that it's not going to be ratified this year. All the groups, say that, we all want cleaner water. I don't know if every one of them means it, but I know our group does, and they want to continue working with DEP to try to get to some sort of a solution. Last week, when everybody was in town, there was a hearing that was held, and DEP ended up issuing a notice of change, revising the proposed rule. That started another 21-day clock running. So it is possible somebody could actually challenge this rule. There's a number of things going on that, is not in favor of it being ratified. And so, we'll keep an eye on that. Jeff will have a more extensive look into that in his show coming up at 9:25 or whenever he does his. But I think we're safe on that one for now. These are the education bills that affect the ABET accreditation. If ABET even requires the DEI programs in their criteria, but they did not have it on their last agenda, so it would be a while even before they could do that. The other thing we know, for those that may know about this issue but haven't been on some of the calls, is that it's on the universities are kind of on a 5-year deal where they get reaccredited every 5 years. So however they have long, if this passes, and I think it will, but if it does, however many years they have left until their next accreditation, and then even if there was a problem with the DEI program or whatnot, they would get an additional 5 years before they would lose any accreditation. So even if they pass this year, there's time to work on that and get it right. I refuse to believe our legislature would allow the universities to be unaccredited. Peter, did you have something?
I was gonna say I've spoken with several chairs of civil engineering programs and deans of engineering, and they're not as concerned about this. They feel that they can rewrite some of their classes and other things around this, referring to history or other things. So they said you'd be surprised how creative we are when we accredit our programs.
Well,
so
that's what I've heard, and I've been told that too. And the funny thing about that is DeSantis has already called him out on that and said, "Hey, I know you're going to have the program, and you're just going to call it something else." And we're watching for that. So it's going to, from a political observation viewpoint, it's going to be kind of fun to watch.
I just can't imagine a gubernatorial staffer sitting there and watching what 13 different programs at 14 different universities are going through and various ABET. I mean, I've sat on a department advisory board for over a dozen years, and I still don't know exactly how that goes through. There's one or two professors that even know how it works in most of the schools. So it's an interesting animal.
No doubt. No doubt. But, and like I've said in the past, I mean, it's going to be other states too. Florida's not going to be alone in this one. So we'll see how that works. I think the next bills are that original Department of the DOT bill that I talked about. Those seem to have sort of come to a halt. They used to
morning.
have the phase design build and stuff in there, and they took that stuff out. I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? Nope. All right, so anyway, I still have them on our monitor list. I'm still watching them, but they haven't moved for a little while. And then the fire sprinkler system, I can't really get this figured out. We got the part out of the Senate bill. Well, it never was put in the Senate bill. This would allow contractors to design changes to a fire sprinkler system. And, we've said, and I think it's a deal that was made a while back, that, we're okay if you need to move heads, but if you have to put additional pipe in to create new heads, that needs to be done by an engineer. So the Senate bill is fine. The House bill, I guess she's being a little stubborn because I know we've talked to her, and they went ahead and did it in the House with that language in there. So, but Senator Perry has given us his assurances he won't do that. So I think we're good there. Do we have any questions? I would just say, and I'm not going to ask Derek to weigh in on this. He can if he wants, but just a little. This was a very interesting week for me in the political world, because you had like three major things happen. Number one, there was a Fox News poll that came out that shows Trump beating DeSantis 54-23. It's not even close. Now he's getting a bump off of what's going on with him. But still, DeSantis has been trending down. So it's going to be interesting to see if our legislature reacts to that. And maybe he doesn't have quite the king status they thought, but we'll see. I mean, to me, this is all just interesting. These are not predictions. And then we had, the Disney thing where the Disney board went in. If you haven't heard, the day that the House was voting on the bill to, strip their control of Reedy Creek, the board of Reedy Creek actually met and signed all their responsibilities over to Disney for the next 30 years. So the new DeSantis board goes to meet yesterday, and they realize there's nothing they can do without Disney's approval. So that's a touche. We'll see how it works out in court, but that was interesting. And obviously we have the Trump being indicted yesterday. So what effects that will have? I think most people think it'll give him a bump initially, but will that stick? And we'll just have to wait and see. But interesting times politically. So, but we just keep our nose to the grindstone on the engineering issues, and we try to stay out of the rest. But if anybody's got any questions, raise your hand or jump on. If not, we'll call it a meeting, and we'll do it again next week. Peter.
Sorry, just one more thing.
Sure.
Maybe we can put it on monitor. But
You're
that's
just
that
trying to
House
get us to
bill.
9 o'clock, aren't you?
It's true. I am, I bill by the hour, sir. I haven't billed by the hour in 20 years.
Go ahead, send me your invoice.
House Bill 383, Senate Bill for 346, and that's the public construction bill that is changing some of the limits and some of those other things. I just think we should put that on monitor. I don't think I'm not necessarily sure it impacts the organizations, and we're not sure how each of the local agencies is going to deal with that. But that is something I think we should probably look at and report. I checked again this morning, and it looked like House Bill 383 hasn't moved since the 7th of March. Right. And if that's the case, then there's
a couple of bills. I'm glad you brought that up. And we chatted about that. There's a couple of bills that are there that I am watching. I just haven't put them on the report, but I will. One is what Peter's talking about, and basically that affects the local preferences in contracting. And the legislature's been chipping away at that for a few years. And they're down to the point where, the law says if there's state money involved, then they can't have a local preference. It's open to everybody. But now the state's wanting to say that even if a project in Broward County that's totally funded by Broward County, that they still wouldn't be able to have the local preferences. So there's some consternation over that. And then the other one that was brought up by Didier, let me see if I can. That's the municipal utilities. And this would prevent them from moving money into the general fund of their municipality. That's again, something the legislature's been picking on for a number of years. I know those are important, and they're both kind of in that same position where you're kind of watching them right now and going, I don't want to spend, any resources on this because it doesn't look like it's going to go, but we're prepared to move if something happens, and at least weigh in with our opinion on this.
Yeah, great. So if we could just add those to the list for next week or something for monitoring, we'd appreciate it.
I'll put them on there.
Thanks, sir.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Sure.